Death Note is currently available to watch on Netflix and is directed by Adam Wingard, and this film is an adaptation of a Japanese anime series or something of the same name. And in this version of the story, it's about a kid called Light who's in high school, and he receives a book called the Death Note from this death god called Ryuk, played by Willem Dafoe, and he writes someone's name down and he needs to think of their face, and he writes like a method of how he wants them to die, and this death god carries it out. And that's essentially the story on the surface. Obviously it gets a little bit deeper and a little bit darker, but that's essentially what you need to know going into this film. Now, I was quite excited to see this film because it's directed by Adam Wingard, who directed The Guest. And his direction for The Guest, combined with Dan Stevens' performance in that film, made for what is one of the most underrated and overlooked films I've seen in recent memory. I love The Guest, and I think that this film does carry over a lot of the stuff that The Guest did really well. For example, this is a gorgeous looking film, and I think that Adam Wingard is a director who's really good at making a scene that would normally look really just dull and boring, like two characters sitting and talking. He's really good at making scenes like that, or any scene for that matter, look really good and look better than it should look. And I think that the use of a really active camera, which is almost constantly moving, and some really cool Dutch angles do actually sort of create a sense of uncertainty and sort of paranoia, which I think does do a good job of sort of making the film, you know, feel a little bit more sort of intense. This film has been getting quite a lot of hate. You know, people saying the cast is, you know, whitewashing, and the story is like really stupid, and you know, it's nowhere near as smart or cool as it thinks it is. And I do have a ton of problems with this film, which I'll get into later, but I do think that this film does have quite a lot of really great things. Like I said, the direction is really good, the acting for the most part is really good. The lead actor, I thought, actually played the character quite well, and also the character of L, I think, is really interesting, although I did want to see him get a little bit more development, see a little bit more of the backstory. Easily the best part of this film is Willem Dafoe as Ryuk, this death god. He was just brilliant. I think Willem Dafoe, especially now with all this Joker talk, you know, with the whole like new standalone DC stuff, Willem Dafoe I think is definitely, you know, one of the actors that I would want to see play the Joker, and he just proves it in this role, because his character in this film is really, really calm and controlled, but also really like manipulative, and also like kind of a loose cannon and really unpredictable, and I really enjoyed his performance, but he was just not in the film enough. Like, the character, which is by far the best part of the film, is barely in this film, and that really pissed me off. And another thing that really pissed me off was the fact that this film is only an hour and 40 minutes. It doesn't work. It should at least be 2 hours plus, 2 hours and 10 minutes plus, I guess. Like, the setup, the premise for this film is so interesting. This sort of death note, and some of the most interesting stuff that they try to explore in this film was done in like a 5-minute montage, and that really pissed me off. I feel like this film was more focused in sort of like the high school, teen, young adult aspect, and not the more darker and complex things, you know, that a film like this could have dealt with. And they keep giving us hints of these characters and their backgrounds and their backstory, but we never got to see any of it. I really wanted to see them explore the more mystical, sort of mythological side of this death god, and you know, you get some hints, but I wish like there was a flashback or something. I've never seen the anime, but I don't know, I just want to see something like that. And the character of L, like I said, who is played really well. All the acting is really good. Also, I do think that even though sort of the third act, which kind of comes off as a very sort of Hollywood type third act, you know, very sort of big, explosive, but then there's some like, but then there is this sort of plot point that is revealed towards the end after that third act that makes it feel kind of a lot smarter, but at the same time creates a ton of plot holes. And I'm just not really sure about that ending. I think they left it a little bit too ambiguous, and I'm not a fan of ambiguous endings. I think the only ambiguous ending that worked for me was Prisoners, but I'm just not a big fan of that type of ending. It just kind of leaves so much in the air, and I just wish that this film had been longer, you know, wish that it had a tighter script, you know, wish that it sort of meandered less and just stayed focused, and instead of going for these stupid young adult stuff, actually went to explore sort of things that, you know, should be explored. I just wish that, you know, you have such a great setup, you have so many good actors, so many talented people working, you know, on this film, and I just wish that they had, you know, done a little bit more with it. You know, maybe they could have made it a little bit darker and a little bit more sort of less Hollywood. That's my biggest problem with this film, is it just feels too generic. But I do think that Adam Wingard does a good enough job directing this film, actually. It's nowhere near as good as The Guest, but I do think that this is an alright film. It is pretty enjoyable. All the performances are great. I just wish that the script was just a little bit better. and that's why I'm going to give Death Note a B-. Guys, thank you as always for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please stay tuned for my review and recap of Game of Thrones Season 7 Episode 10 coming out tomorrow. Thank you as always guys for watching. Thank you.